From the 20th of the 10th month of 1438, The Real Vampirism of Codex Aristarchus by A. Morain. Ryan Fleming, straight out of prison, wrote this book, and I'm not reading it, so technical difficulties, I don't know why. The cover of Codex Aristarchus by A. Morain has the home plate of baseball-like seal of the Draken Covenant. It is a pentagon within the pentagon with the point sticking down, which is a rectangle. Isosceles triangle hanging down from a square. This symbol of Satan as the dragon has the two top lines, and the center of the top connect to that with a total of 3 lines, like 2 open-ended rectangular isosceles triangles with their longest sides removed from the 4 upper points of the pentagon. Comes lines that overlap to form a diamond lozenge over the central line, as the set of 2 and the set of 1 descends. This graven sign is meant to form a link to the cult and the rituals of Satan as Draken. Satan as the dragon is a manifestation known to the Christian world through Revelations 12, 3-9, 13, 1-10, and 22:10. An opening quote. I think of like a bat with the symbol. So the bat and the teeth could be what's being hinted at. An opening quote from the Communio. The Communio. Okay. Is before the foreword of Codex Aristarchus by A. Morain, and it translates like communication. Communication is with others of the elite. Educate me in the darkness of persuasion. Monstrous art deities, I arrive with the means of my being. Communicate for me. Deities of the witches, communicate with me. Or, I guess you'd have to pronounce it differently in Latin, but that's what they're saying. At least, no, that's my translation of it. I know it would be best to say stuff in Latin or whatever language, but I would think that it is best that the translations of formulas are available within a text. Sar Azag Kala of The Lands Behind, on March 24th, 2016, mentions the founding of the Order of 9 Angles within the Temple of the Sun at Dark, Yorkshire, in the region of the Moors murders, out of the Draken Covenant and other groups. The Order of the 9 Angles is well known for their lack of morals. You know, as an amoral. The Draken Covenant is a focus on the vampirism of approach to being undead, which is neither mere fantasy or fetish. It is a lunar dark occultism that pleases some from the destructive Satanist persuasion. It is a group that fosters a detachment from the humanness and perhaps a becoming something else among the evil and predatory. We'll see how the other 25 parts of this book serve as an understanding of the misanthropic. Those of the Draken Covenant would believe in a fated day of wrath for those who are not even attaining to vampiric ways. Those are upon the principle that bodies in the causal realms, that bodies in causal realms would need to feed on causal energy. David Myatt, in the philosophy of the Newman, postulated a causal or existence in being rather than doing, which would not need to feed. Being rather than doing, think of, how many New Age cults use that. The Draken Covenant has never been a large group, but I would venture that they could be more popular with exposure. They would call towards being like a lich or a living corpse of sorts, wandering the earth and doing astral travel or exteriorization. Yeah. This and familiarity absorption, rather than mainly on blood, would be their main way of psychic vampirism. It is a path that is supposed to be that for those top predators with an occult bend. Now, on my New Age religion playlist, I guess there's other groups I can talk about separately, but I guess that gets them all. But they sort of have a set of vampire spirits that kind of feed on the energy of those who worship their leaders. Is the myth, the Ashwar Kaniwalis, as they're called. When involved in a social order of a spiritual nature, it is usually best to have a teacher, but Codex Aristarchus by A.A. Morain sets itself out as, well, if you don't have a teacher, this is a book. David Myatt renounced his Order of Nine Angles role. When involved in a social order of a spiritual nature, it is usually... Noviates help out their tutors in exchange for teachings on vampirism. The current head of the Draken Covenant is called A.A. Morain. The sinister tradition is a key text in those ways of finding out what is and what to do. Manuscript Naas, a practical guide to becoming an adept. And Hostia, that means sacramental bread. Secret teachings of the O&A. Fenrir, Ira, Exiat, and other texts are to help with matters like how to acquire and define knowledge in the quest for adepthood. Initiation of a deeper sort happens after different abilities seem to have been developed, either a full fast before the new moon with minimal speaking or minimal acting without, or minimal eating without meat, is the black fast observed beforehand. The sigil of Drakon is meditated on in a quiet spot with meditations on the holiness of Satan in a graveyard with regard to where Saturn is in the sky, which is the hardest part of some spiritual practices per se, is the math and that sort of stuff. At least for a lot of people, it's there are harder things, but for me anyways. The initiate bleeds on the paper with a symbol before making a declaration of intention for his life and putting graveyard dirt on himself. Remember I said that patchouli is used as a replacement for graveyard dirt for some people. Afterwards, the initiate practices imagining a psychic travel out to find victims to feed on. Another practice would be to join New Age, Neo-Pagan, or Wiccan groups to perform psychic vampirism upon them. That will prepare them to be the sort of terrorist that countries really can't stop. The psychic and spiritual game will be secret. You know. Now, if you terrorize people on a physical level, it's obviously, you know. But before Ryan Fleming went to prison, I don't know if there's any mention out there of Draken Covenant being there that doesn't. Yeah, I'm not sure that actually existed. I think the Order of Nine Angles happened before every group that's, you know. Self-control and fear-mongering are the devices. The Black Adept is spoken about in Al-Quran 47:14, in the adorning in their eyes of any evil seen fitting to serve his ends. This even reaches to a depth shown in Al-Quran 25:43 and 45:23 in the mention of the autodeists' worship of themselves. These are the adherents of Satan, mentioned in Al-Quran 35:6, and the worshippers are Abadi Shayateen, Ibadi Shaitan in the singular, you know, if they're worshiping one demon, warned about in Al-Quran 36:30. Ibadi Shaitan, yeah, double SH. The concepts, you know, the servants of Satan, the concepts and practices are not the dark experiences that may even be spoke about truthfully. The master elite of the Drakan are working towards their purpose with their followers. Is it a toughness, or is merely a spirit, or is it merely a spiritual sadomasochism? Some say that Satan hates humility, and that is the hero of these sort of predators who do more than feed on donors who would like it to turn against even their own humanity. A lack of energy is not understood by those who are drawn by fantasy to blood and mental vampirism. A willingness to violate the rules is the mark of a true predator, according to Agash Hashalom, our Soldier's Ascent. The meditation of dead stillness is to be as still as possible in greater and greater lengths on a daily basis. Whether into the Drakan sigil or into any other single point, scrying or single-pointed gazing is practice, but with ignoring the results in what is called the unwavering eye. Didn't E.A. Koetting use that phrase too? The ascended vampiric masters are astral beings of various lineages that are communicated with by the processes and the shock of them all. They are worshipped as dark gods. The Vampiri ascent is to collect a causal blood essence and move up the chain of being by imaginative travel and blood rites. Breath, blood centers of the body, are the 7 most common chakras. Visualization of the Drakan sigil and continuing to maintain the causal body is key here. Tendrils that grasp and red-violet rain are pictured as something to feed on. In some New Age cosmologies, these are the colors of the astral and etheric planes, which form a barrier on one hand between the mind and body, on one hand, and the mind and spirit on the other. Again, I bring up that one theory are vampire practices, astral projection, our soul travel to feed on others. You can kind of think of this as curses, and, the rules would be, no guilt, no shame. Is it someone who deserves it? But a real predator is not so much. Those in the Drakon Covenant are not supposed to wait to rule over others in the cult in order to have political or other power over others. They may be fascists or fanatics seeking first-hand knowledge of Satan, and those they consider to be dirt gods and ascended masters. Their bodies are just vessels, and the mind is seen as an entity all on its own. Those considered undead gods want a collective working towards immorality and a dehumanizing future for all. Rather than some eightfold yoga path, those on the sevenfold way of vampirism put themselves as a gate to being from the realms of cause and effect. Like Matthew Lawrence and the Become a Living God crew, the encouragement here is to build up your own empire. And as a parallel, we have anyone from scholars like Joseph Campbell and his The Myths Are About You. We each need to do our own hero deeds. I don't know if I have an exact quote, but that's how I remember it in my head. But to this mystics and the prophets pretty much across the board, it's about you. You have to do it. It's not, oh, look at this great system of government that existed a bunch of time ago. Well, why don't you have something likewise? Ooh, a philosopher king, great philosopher king. Yeah, do your own hero deeds. No Mithra dying for you. You got to do it all for yourself. And surely we can do what we need to do in life. 1 Corinthians 2:14, Mosiah 3:19, one of the Latter-day Saint scriptures, and Alma 41:11, another one of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints scriptures, speak of the natural man as the enemy of God. Al-Quran 30:30 and Al-Quran 95:4-8 speaks of the natural being as the best of positions of the human. The Lamia Naturalis, our natural monster of the Drakon Covenant, takes the Anafsul Amara, or animal soul concept found in Al-Quran 12:53, to the ends of embracing the corruption of it towards monstrous ends. Some say those called changelings became vehicles for old masters to take over as children. But I would say dramatic changes later in life can manifest in similar ways. The females who took over bodies were called Morain, and Morain were the males. That was the title for the leaders of black lodges of vampires. Now, Prince Hall lodges are a different black lodge. Black being used as the term for people who with notable black ancestry. So they were given different lodges for a long time, and it wasn't until 2008 that they finally did away with all semblance of prejudice. Although, you know, decades earlier it was considered unacceptable in the Freemason lodges, but the Prince Hall lodges were made as equal in terms of masonry in 2008. Morain, so, you know, people, occultists talking about black lodges probably don't mean that, but I just thought that relevant. Morain means dreadful or great, and the sign of it resembles pointed teeth biting a rod. The host, deemed to be possessed by the old master, is to be groomed, and a ritual transfer is done after preparing the coven to be led after the master is gone from their current body, and maybe preparations to extend the life of their body. Whether or not it happens, people may very well be convinced that it does, to the point of experiencing something like it. It shouldn't surprise you to know the sigil of the Morain is like the letter M made with scythes, as the outer lines of the letter hang out a bit, 4 lines zigzagging with their bottom tips just over a bar with a little circle attached to the left and a cone bar end, as if to stand the whole symbol up on its right side, are the remaining elements of the sigil of Morain. And just like the chants, we can respond to them in how we want and mention them or use them in terms of our own intentions. So you see one mention of a symbol. Don't worry, it's not stuck there. There's other potential for symbols. Is it merely psychopomp? When feeding tendrils produce ecstatic energy or sleepy feelings. Either way, this is a dark magic they urge you to not care about the victim in. So a different opium and amphetamine of the Mattises, right? Vampirism, the opium and the amphetamine of the of the wolves among the masses, maybe. Method acting or insight rolls are taken for 6 months or so each to test initiates and give them social abilities. There's a lot of people who would like to start a persecution of all non-Christians, or in some areas maybe something else. So it's good to kind of figure out how to blend in and produce tolerance and produce change within groups, and people can feed psychically or physically, but it may also be said that there is a spiritual energy that can be manipulated. This can be done without victims too. Are there shadow beings who feed without humans sending them forth? Is poltergeist activity directed by psychic projections? Is evil purely in the context? Can one go beyond good and evil? Can or should spiritual and physical evil unite? If Satan and those called undead gods are not friend or saviors, can they be trusted to form covenants with or seek to be on the side of? Now, what defines something as witchcraft is the involvement of the devils, the pacts with the devils in the manipulation of consciousness of the physical world by causing sympathetic change in some way or another, or at least the attempt to. So witchcraft is obviously something very different than mere magic, the change of consciousness, the deliberate change of consciousness, the art and science of religion, although we can definitely say that Satanism is a religion of sorts. Ritual sadomasochism may need something more heavy duty than fetish gear. Knots in the ends of strings may help towards reaching the desired states, though. Breathing, other meditative methods, sharp item collecting, bloodletting and collection, scent offerings of frankincense and other incense, and even trips to Beckett Street Cemetery in Leeds, an astral projection to the Thackeray Medical Museum, are used to assert or experiment as if there is a connection to ascended masters and to let go of restriction enough to be noticed. A central ritual would be before an altar of Draken. They kneel and beat while reciting the Diabolos and the Communio thrice. I already rendered the Communio into English, as it is the opening of Codex Aristarchus by A. Morain, but the translation of the Diabolos is as follows. The day of wrath is her day. They will pay in a century of glowing embers. Bear witness are learned from Satan by means of the oracle reader. The great earthquake is in a time ahead, when the Avenger is about to approach. All who are close to scattering are shattering. For some, the more. A 14th part allegory would be the peak of Codex Aristarchus by A. Morain. To those into the dark occult, it reads as something that could be real, or no less than something that could be experienced. In the 0 section, the Ga Wath I can't find any that has a meaning for this, chant of the Fool tarot card in the Order of 9 Angles system is said by Annalise, after being a student of a vampire master for a decade, said over a bloodied crystal when her solitary journey was truly on its way. Remember, the Order of 9 Angles, they're four-sided crystals. The edges would obviously double that. So, 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait, no, the edge. So it'd be four-sided. Yeah, the 8-sided then. But I like the 8-sided more like the pyramid. Oh, wait, no, that's 9-sided because the bottom. But okay, I'm making myself look bad. I better shut up. Over a bloodied crystal, when her solitary journey was truly on its way, the heroine of the story acquired a handwritten book in an unknown language from a bookseller in Ilkley for an exceptionally low price. She meets Alexander while he was waiting to meet a group with interesting items in a bag. An armed gang with occult influences as seen in Leeds. The hero and heroine meet again, and it is talked of how no one has been able to become part of that gang by choice. An opfer, or sacrificial rite, is planned along with that of an initiation. At the house they were staying at, Siofra, or changeling, is bothered by repeated bad dreams that probably mean seduction in the darkness and death, into darkness and death. Lucas of Sayersby and Siofra, Metten Haworth, are in closure. They talked of how a sparrow seemed to come to life in her hands as a child, and that led to rumors of her being a witch. Burn the witch! Burn the witch! Burn the witch! But Lucas was part of a group that people would call witches. Back at the house, Alexander couldn't sleep after Annalise's tour of her coven's sacred spots in the locality. The book hidden between two stones being lent to Alexander before entering the temple with books and graven signs on a wooden floor part reminded me of Joseph Smith's claim and his establishing temple rights for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Joseph Smith was also a Freemason, so semblances, I'm told, abound, but he very specifically rearranged things to the mythology of that particular Presbyterian / Baptist / apostolic, church. There they performed overwhelming vampiric rituals of the dying of miasma breath and his own blood on a crystal pyramid. Pyramid, being like, 4 sides, not 5 sides, but anyways. Siofra met Annalise and was taught her nightmares made her special. Siofra was initiated by moonlight to both sanguines, our blood vampirism, and the spiritual current of the group. Annalise, are full of grace upon a spiritual oath prophesied over the drugged Siofra of her future motherhood and having what she herself had in life. The fact that Siofra was 17 reminds me of The Wake World by Aleister Crowley, and how the peak moments of chapter 15 of The Blonde Stranger and The Creek center of when the Princess of Cups was 17 and what she wanted for her life then. Plans for when she was 18 and older that didn't come to fruition, but Banan Ath Ga Wath was vibrated. The Dracon Covenants, the Communio, was said as a bloody pyramid crystal was raised out of a bowl in a coven ritual in the darkness of a pine forest of West Yorkshire. The famous gang of robbers was as a silent guard of the rituals to gain information from ascended masters, or maybe just the demons that connect to their egregores. I am reminded of the Gantianton robbers in Book of Mormon mythology. The gang had their bomb blessed with rituals involving bloody sigilia. Their symbols. They put blood on the symbols, or I guess they could make the symbols out of blood. Annalise dreamt of being on a red with black mountain, on being on red with black mountains, and being addressed as a Morena, or female master that transferred bodies, that is as a goddess of that planet in her legacy. Well, the become a living god, sort of a way of thinking. Become a living god, become a living goddess is sort of a way of thinking that resulted in, the Become a Living God group. I would also kind of say the Yehuda becoming like God stuff kind of possibly could have, on some level, influenced that. But Annalise dreamt of being, isn't one of the goals of many martial spiritual paths an empowerment that places one's own self as the highest god of their existence. Alain, our handsome, planned another robbery with his gang and did more occult rituals in an abandoned factory outside of Leeds. The symbol of Azanagan, our the Good Queen, harkens to the dream of Annalise and the activity of the gang's surprise attacks. The police encountered an explosion with them, and Elaine saw a dark figure arise from broken quartz in the wreckage. Siafra astrally traveled to psychically feed on sleeping villagers. Siafra then would dream of Annalise guiding her. But I've explained in the live ritual about seeing the dead, how the memories are seen as living. Siafra was placed over the men and women of the coven, and Annalise left for good in her car. Alexander went out to feed on a helpless victim by means of a psychic tendril at a train station. People gathered around as he left the man to die instead of just get sick as planned. There was a blood tank in which a Morain, or a male master, who was believed to have transmigrated into another body, was waiting along with his knowledge of alien worlds to return again, but a worshiper in ritual clothing was nearby. Remember what I said years ago, but before I had Facebook, and I don't remember which work it was, but I talked about people who believe or practice vampirism as generally being connected to belief in reincarnation. Another was kneeling in an attic over a scary symbol he had painted in his own blood in the dimly lit room. Tiptoe through the tulips played on repeat as he became detached and experienced the madness and appearances of devils around the appearance of a being who controlled these so-called ascended masters. Is demonic descent a better way to think of the Drakon Covenant's mission? The bliss-driven vampires who live in the high population areas are Asiatic urban vampire clan would be open to being criminal, but only for their own alleged best interests, with a knowledge of why they are doing what they do. Nightclubs and youthful rebellion can foster an understanding of rebelling in order to cause a change, and can be used to gain a following in one's vampiric transformation. Anarchic and criminal activities may not be best to have home as the base of operations. Those of the Drekian way are called towards the 21 satanic points in Codex Aristarchus. Nothing to do with George Soros. In Codex Aristarchus, but my version, filtered through the Satanic Church of the Ankhs, are as follows. 1. Accept your own dominance. 2. Realize the tests of the inferiors. 3. Raise the green flag of peace and wholeness, if you will. 4. Acknowledge the current, actually scientific worldview. 5. Do not deny yourself your subsistence upon this earth. 6. Love in the future. 7. Abilities are better used by choice than forced. 8. Relish breaks between difficulties. 9. Let the thunderbolts of change embrace you, and love the God who made it happen. 10. Anxiety breeds confusion, and brings death more speedily. 11. 1/64 calls to 63/64. 12. Modernity has not advanced ethics. 13. Knowledge of history can put us in an emotionally detached state. 14. What is just is ever just. 15. Realize what goes on with what you have before you were involved with it. 16. We all entered and must leave life. 17. Don't struggle when not necessary, and with the utmost striving when it is required. 18. There is always a higher level of achievement for both men and spirits. 19. Attraction and aversion are both traits we need to be complete. 20. Tracing the lines of a sad face enhances the great lie. 21. Survival does not always leave us for the better. And the Draken Covenant, the Order of Nine Angles sort of leaves out the world card, doesn't it? Because that final path down to Earth from the moon, that's kind of left out. But if we were to do that, we'd have to have Baphomet or Alastros, the kind of Baphomet and the four demonic daughters. After that chapter dedicated to their dragon lord, we come to what some would consider a misunderstanding of Friedrich Nietzsche's acceptance of what others call evil as something of real value. Well, if it's falsely considered evil, certainly it's full of value. That's why they're lying about it. They would be right in some respects of anger, hate, and alleged evil. But wouldn't some feelings and presumed evils be disempowering? Can't feelings and behavior be transformed without self-hatred? There is a hope among some sinister people of a lawless future, influenced by unseen dark forces that allegedly orthodox and orthoprax do not have the control over society they want. There is more than superstition to the claim of dark gods and the cleansing of humanity. What abilities will you leave, maintain, and gang in? What side will you do it for? How has Codex Aristarchus been for you as a guide to the Draken ways? Did you have a living master to guide you? Or was this just it? And so Ryan Fleming, I guess, is in prison now for a longer term for statutory rape. A single man of his age. That's called looking into their life. The police want to do that. I mean, for most people, it's a definite risk. But his smaller sentence crime was very serious. He raped and tortured someone at a party. His girlfriend reached in and smacked, but didn't take part in the sexual assault. Only probation was given to her. He did a touch of hard time. He said he did it for the group to fit in at a party. People walked by, they witnessed the whole thing. No one thought of stopping anything, and he supposed so there definitely is a predatory nature to all this thing, but as far as real world evil physically practiced upon other people, that allegedly hasn't happened since that incident. We see him kind of provoking police officers, and that's why, who's this guy? Convicted rapist, barely got a sentence. We're going to look into his life and find something. So they found something. So you got to look at the cost. And one of the promotions of this book is the idea that, you know, here's some stuff that even in prison you can do, and that's one of the things coming through. But so you got to think to yourself when it comes to your physical behaviors, you know, Epicurean sort of cost and reward sort of approach. And we are indeed Nexions, for what we choose to become or to stay Nexions as.